Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I am Brigid Burke and today's the 9th of February 2025. It is a very gray day here. We've just had more snow and more ice. I did a Reiki masterclass yesterday for my first two Reiki students who were Melissa and Jasmina. And that, so I was a little concerned with the weather. I thought, okay, I don't want to anybody to I didn't want to put anybody in a position where they had to drive in ice coming down. I mean, snow is one thing and ice is quite another. So anyway, we had we actually had a really nice time. It was actually a really good class, and we finally have a schedule sorted out for the next through beginning of June, I think, actually, or through the middle of June, to do Reiki Master Teacher training. So with that, those of you, good morning, Kathleen. Those of you who are interested in the tarot workshops that I'm doing and the dream workshops, now that I know what that schedule is, I've been kind of waiting. I have a whole lot of things that I've been trying to wait to see what's going to happen with them in terms of timing. So I'm going to, now I feel like I'm in a position, oh, good morning. Oh, hey, nice to see you. Alistair, yeah, I know that I usually see you over in Katonia, so it's nice to see you over here. So yeah, I'm actually, I had the Reiki masterclass yesterday, and that went really well. And so now I'm able to, once I kind of had that, and Alex, hey, how's it going? Once I actually had all of that in place, I was able to, now I'm able to look at what I can schedule. The problem is February is such a short month that I don't know if I'm going to be able to do both the tarot and the dream workshop. I think I can probably do, I'll probably do the tarot workshop because I think there's a lot of people who are waiting for the follow-up on that. And I may have to like put the dream workshop off to like March 1st or something. But if we're doing the tarot workshop, it might have to be this coming Saturday. So in any case, there's still a lot of scheduling things that I have to figure out. And yeah, it's been a rather interesting week. And I have been very tired. Like I said, the class was great yesterday. I came home, but like within a couple hours, I was just really exhausted. So I went to bed quite early last night. I guess the good thing about that is that then, I was up in plenty of time for this morning. And if there's anything that I was doing in terms of, I don't know, some of the other things that had been on my mind. I feel like I dreamt about my dad last night. And I still have to delve a little bit into what that dream was, because it was rather interesting. It was like he was wanting me to watch video like he wanted me to watch this guy who was, I don't know if he was lecturing or if he was a preacher or what he was, but he's like, oh, I would like you to watch. I was like sitting in at my parents' house. He had his chair, and can you watch these? And from what I remember about what I was watching, it was somebody who was like kind of a combination of just somebody who just seemed almost very, very military in the way that they were. But also somebody who seemed like very maybe conservative or evangelical, which, by the way, my dad was never any of those things. My dad was somebody who was, he didn't care about religion at all. So anyway, so yeah, so we've got this, So yeah, so I had that last night, and I'm still sort of working through that in my mind about what that might have been about. There seems to be a lot going on in the family currents here. So we'll see what happens with that I feel like there's something coming up in the coming week. It's like I'm kind of ramped up about something, and I'm like, okay, that's intuitive. I'm not really seeing what that manifests about in the external world yet, but I guess we'll find out. So, okay, I do have some readings I want to do today. The topic that what I wanted to mention today has a lot to do with angels. Okay. And because I think I had seen something, it was Carolyn, I don't know if you say Carolyn Miss or Carolyn Miss, I'm not really sure. It's MYSS. And if I followed her more, I would know exactly how to pronounce her name. But she had I've seen some of her videos pop up, and probably because of my interest in Jungian psychology and the kind of spiritual coaching work and stuff that I do, these are the kind of things that will show up in your feed. And again, it's not that I have anything against her, really. I mean, I know people who read her books or have listened to her lectures or who follow her. But she had a video title that kind of grabbed my attention, and she said, "Everybody here has met an angel. Like there's only somebody in your life who is an angel." And and my reaction to that was, well, no, actually, probably not. But again, then I realized, I'm like, okay, she's probably using this terminology in a very different way. Because a lot of times, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the terminology of the word angel. That's kind of why this came up, what the origin of this term is. So I know it's so let's see. Let me just see something here. Oh. Okay. So, okay. Anyway, just sorry, just had a little admin to do there. Okay, so it's what you call it. Okay, so the term angel has to do with a lot of different things here. It has, okay, a lot of times we think of angel in terms of somebody who is, I doubt I've ever met an angel in this lifetime. Well, yeah, well, of course, we know that I have, but not not in the sense of a person who is an angel, right? No, angel, a lot of people use that term as kind of somebody who is like, okay, if you have help that comes out of nowhere, for example, let's just say you're in a crisis situation and a random person shows up and helps you, then a lot of people will say, you know, oh, that person's an angel, right? That person's an angel. And I'm just like, okay, that's one way to use the term. You know, we might think of somebody as being like an angel in the sense that they're kind of, they seem like a messenger from God, maybe, who showed up at the right time to help you do something. But again, the idea, and then there's an idea too. I know there's a lot of conversation around people who might be angels, right? We always say, oh, you know, is there people who are actually angels incarnate, right? Okay, so typically when we talk about the idea of somebody turning up at the right time, okay, I would tend to think that that person is not so much an angel as they are a vessel, okay? They are a what you call it? They may be a vessel of circumstance. You yourself could be that vessel, okay? And to be a vessel is not the same as being an angel. Being an angel is an angel is something that is really quite different. So, you know, so again, if people are using the term very loosely, you know, yeah, maybe you think of it as kind of like an angelic intervention, but all of us at some point, because we are all connected, okay, because there is a connection between all people, at some time, you may cross paths with somebody who provides something for you that you maybe weren't expecting, or that came at the right time. But a lot of that too just has to be involved with being in the flow of life. It's not necessarily that you have a special connection to that person. That person could be there today and gone tomorrow. Just to give an example, we had a big storm here last May, and part of one of my trees outside fell into my neighbor's yard. And my neighbor, anyway, I'm not going to get into my thoughts about my neighbor, but I was just kind of like, okay, I need to get this tree piece cut up and everything, but I need it out of my neighbor's side of the yard. I need to move it to my side of the yard. And I mean, I had certain equipment. I don't have a chainsaw or anything, but I have certain equipment, and I was trying to kind of cut it up a little bit. And it was just like, I was just exhausted. I'm like, yeah, this is ridiculous. You know, it was just really heavy. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this kid just comes walking down the street. I think now, in retrospect, I think he might actually work for the town DPW. Because I think I've seen him since then. But he was driving like this white BMW, and he kind of came down and he stopped and he said, hey, he said, do you need help with that tree branch? I said, yeah, I just don't want it in her yard. I want it in my yard. And so he said, oh, okay. So he literally just grabbed the other end very easily, and we picked it up and we moved it over. And I said, thanks. He said, yeah, no problem. He says, I'm just going around helping people. Then he got in his car and he left. He was just gone. And I was like, that's what I mean by something like that. Like somebody just shows up. And later, when my sister and brother-in-law came to help me get rid of this tree branch, the three of us couldn't lift it. I'm like, how did this guy? And I mean, he wasn't like this guy was like, really ripped and like built or anything. He was just some little guy. He just picked it up and moved it. I was like, okay. And then they were like, how did he pick it up and move it like that? So it almost feels like it's kind of a divine intervention, right? And I think even at the time, I kind of felt that way. Now, he's probably just a regular person, and maybe he's just more fit than he looks because, if he does do that kind of work every day, then, maybe he's just used to lifting crap like that all the time. I mean, that could be the thing. But I think so we may have incidents like that in our lives. And then there have been times too when I have run into people who have been in a crisis for whatever reason, and they will come up to me. They could be total strangers and be like, oh my God, I'm in this situation and I need this. And I'm like, oh, well, did you think to do this and this? Oh, that's exactly what I need to do. Thanks. Like, again, that doesn't make me an angel. That just means I happen to be there at the right time. And that there's almost kind of like this unseen connection. Like when the information gets out, then it comes, somehow the person with the right information comes around, whoever that person is, or the person with the right skill that you need at that moment in time. Okay. So I do distinguish this from angels. Okay. So what is an angel by definition? An angel is an intermediary spirit. Okay. It is a spirit that is a messenger of the divine, whatever the divine happens to be. In ancient Greece, these beings were called daimons, D-A-I-M-O-N, daimons. They are daimonic beings. And if you think that sounds a lot like demonic beings, you would be correct, because that word was changed. And of course, the meaning of the word was changed, because when we think of a demonic being, you are thinking of something that is connected supposedly with the infernal regions, right? With all of that. And Suda, oh, hello, Suda. And divine timing. Well, yes, divine timing certainly has a certain thing, element of it that's connected to that. That is connected to when we talk about divine timing. Sometimes people and situations do just come in at the right time. So yeah, you've got the little frosty thing. Yeah, I know it is a bit frosty out here this morning. So when we talk about an angel, we are specifically talking about a type of being that is an intermediary. And we see these beings throughout, say, religious literature. Now, the term angel, it seems to be reserved more for, we see it in Judaic literature, you see it in Christian literature, you probably see it also in Islamic literature. It tends to belong more to monotheistic kind of thinking. It wouldn't have been a term used by the ancient Greeks. They would have just said, it's a daemon, like Socrates. When you read Plato and read about the dialogues of Socrates, Socrates says, yes, I get all my information from a daemon. Okay. Now, angels are a very specific type of daemon. There's many kind of daemonic spirits, and angels are just one type. And you might think of what we think of as demons are really more elemental versions of that. They're the ones that are kind of connected to earth energies in particular. And because these energies are trickier, because these energies could be trafficking with them, it's kind of like trafficking with fairies. Again, it's kind of like you're dealing with kind of liminal beings that you're not really quite sure what their intentions are, or they may just not have good intentions towards you. They may not be the kind of daemonic spirits that you want to deal with. Because the term daemon also was a term that was frequently used for psychology as well. For example, ancient Greece, there was a daemon called mania. And that had to do with anybody who kind of like, went what we would now think of as going crazy or whatever, in quotation marks. That supposedly, usually it was Hera in the Greek pantheon, the queen of the gods, who didn't like somebody and would send mania to go afflict that person. So that person, they're acting as a daemon. They're doing something on behalf of a deity, okay, or of some kind of power that they answer to, and they go and they do the thing that they're supposed to do. So that's what these kinds of beings tend to do. Now, when we talk about an angelic daemon, first of all, a lot of times the impressions that we have of angels, like any kind of spirit, can change the way that they look. They don't have to look one particular way. They don't have to, they could appear, you know, as a being with wings. They could appear as an animal. They could appear as, I don't know, a blob of light. They could appear as anything that they want to, really. It's not typical to see angels in their purest form, because an angel in its purest form is probably pretty terrifying. I don't know that the mind, the way it's described, I don't think the mind can apprehend angelic beings in their truest form, I guess we'll say. Oftentimes, you know, we look at the Christmas cards and you see the angels on there, and they always kind of stand there and look very pious, and you know, they're blonde, and you know, and there's just a look to them that seems to fit a certain kind of a type, usually white, right? You know, and you know, if people have that that kind of vision of an angel, and you know, they feel like, oh, I'm connecting, and that's what they look like, then you know, that's what they look like. But or at least that's the face that they're showing you. I think sometimes when they want to be helpful, they may want to show a comforting face. Most angels are described, and again, there's different levels of angels, but that are just talked about. You know, you have seraphim, you have cherubim, you have archangels, you have ones that are just kind of classed as angels. You know, they don't seem to have a specific rank or title. You have the Ophanim. I think, you know, in the Bible, they talk about them as dominions and thrones, and you know, there's all these different terminology for them. But angels generally were described, if you want to talk about biblically accurate angels, they're definitely described as beings who usually have 4 heads of different types. Like, you know, some maybe humanish looking, some are animal looking. They usually have over 1,000 eyes. Archangel Azrael, who I connect with, is described as having like over 1,000 eyes and 40,000 wings. Okay, that's not something that your mind can comprehend. Now, when I see him, he appears with very dark hair. He's very pale, and he has gold eyes. If he appears to me in a human kind of a form, and with black wings, very, very big black wings, but there's nothing threatening about him. He was so not to me anyway. I mean, but he's, you know, but anyways, but there's, so you know what I mean. There's how they appear is going to be different for different people, and maybe different in different circumstances that they may make themselves known. But yeah, the truest form of any of these kinds of things, interestingly, when we talk about the true angelic form and how it looks, there is comparisons in other religions. For example, in Hinduism, when you talk about the idea of the Vishvarupa, okay, the Vishvarupa is an image. Probably the most famous example of this is in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna and Arjuna are having a conversation. And this is the very famous dialogue where Arjuna needs to go to war against, you know, his own, you know, brothers, uncles, and he's just like, I don't want to go to war against my own family. That seems wrong. And Krishna sits him down and tries to explain to him that his dharma is that of a warrior. Like, these are the rules that you follow. You know, you have to do, you know, we were talking about dharma yesterday in class, actually. You know, you have to, your dharma is the role that you play. You fulfill your dharma, and that is your dharma. You need to participate in this. It's not about your personal feelings about it. So, but in this particular conversation, Krishna, who is really an avatar of Vishnu, shows his true form. And when he shows his true form, it's like it looks like a million suns and like a million heads and eyes, and literally Arjuna's like, please just don't show me this anymore. I can't, you know. And so yeah, you have this idea of something that is just literally like, if you actually saw it in front of you, in front of your eyes, your head would just go pop. Like, you would not be able to see it and understand it. And I'm made to understand that the soul is kind of like that as well. That our souls are actually quantum, that if we could actually step back and see our souls, it's not just an image, like an image of me, what I look like now in some kind of ghostly form. That's just kind of one fragment or one piece. Like, the entire soul is actually something that, again, the mind really can't approach it. It's something that exists in multiple places at the same time, and takes on so many different forms and has so many different looks that you can't, it would just boggle your mind to look at it. So we only look at things kind of, you know, one lifetime at a time. You know, we kind of, you know, sometimes we move into looking at, you know, previous lifetimes or different things, but we really can't can't comprehend that. So when you're talking about the angelic realm and about things like that, yes, you're talking about beings that are really beyond our comprehension in terms of how they look. And Alistair was talking about fractals here. Yeah, fractals, that is, you certainly, when you get into the theory of that, that is a kind of an interesting idea that probably connects in with this, certainly in some way. So yeah, so when we talk about angelic beings, they tend to be like that. Now, the other thing about angels to know is that angels don't have free will. Angels, they just act. They just do their thing. They act. And so so a lot of times the actions that they engage in are not personal. They just do what they're assigned to do. Now, I know esoteric practitioners I know who will do workings where they will summon angels. Okay, like you can do grimoire magic and things like that, where people will summon angels and talk to them. David Rankin being a very prominent example of this. I remember attending a session he did in Glastonbury back in 2022, and it was on summoning of angels and things like that. And he said angels are very interesting because when you summon them, they're not, it's very unusual for them to just kind of want to talk. You know, it's not like another spirit guide where they might sit down and tell you things, or, oh, let me tell you about the nature of this and the nature of that. Angels kind of show up and be like, what is it you want to know? Oh, you want to know this thing? This is what it is. And they're done. They don't say anything else. They're just done. You know, you summon them for this thing and they do this thing. That's it. They're not there to expound on anything. They're not going to tell you the mysteries of the universe, right? It's not typically how they operate. Now, in my own connection to Azrael, when initially I started doing the channelings that I do on my channel, they are a little bit at times when I go back and listen to them, some of them feel kind of awkward to me. And I think it's because that's just not the way he's used to operating. He's not, yeah, he's also, it's like, okay, I go somewhere and I have my job and I do my thing. I don't, you know, they're totally focused on their job. It's like they have a thing that they're doing. And I mean, part of their job might be, you know, like they could be a guardian of you, or they could be communicating with you for some reason or some purpose. If you have a connection to them. I've often said that my work with Azrael has a lot to do with the fact that I work with transitions, right? I work with people who are crossing over between different stages of life. I work with people, and sometimes that's even people at end of life. So the idea that Azrael would say, hey, we have something to work on together makes a lot of sense, right? Because he's an angel that deals with transitions. But I've gotten a little more out of him than probably a lot of people have, because he just feels, very, I heard Dave Rankin say they aren't conversational via conjuration, which makes a lot of sense. Right, because you conjure them for a specific reason. I think he had actually said he had, like, it was some thing that he had lost that he was looking for, and he couldn't find it. So he conjured an angel, and the angel's like, oh yeah, it's here. And of course it was where the angel said that it was. But that was it. Okay, that's what you wanted to know. Bye, dismiss me, I'm done. You know, you've gotten the information you wanted. But Azrael, I mean, I get messages from him almost every morning. And the messages that I get are in the Enochian language, which is the, he does not call it Enochian, okay? He has this thing about Enoch because according to Azrael, there are no fallen angels. The idea of fallen angel, he says an angel can't, the idea that angels came to earth and mated with humans, he's like, angels can't mate with humans. It's ridiculous. But also as angel of death, he is somebody who tends to be hated and feared and associated with something very, very dark and very evil. And that also annoys him, because he'll always say to me, he belongs to Iaiotics is the word. I belong to the highest. I belong to the highest realm of heaven. Like, don't say that I belong in this other place, because I don't. So he's kind of very put out at the human religious attitude, especially towards death. Because he says, well, this is just part of a process. This is just part of something that people go through. And again, if you're looking at the soul, the way that we're talking about it, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, you've shed this image and now you're just going to shift into another one. It's not like you disappear or you're annihilated, or you're just that particular identity you assumed is just not there anymore. And from the angelic perspective, they don't get why we're so attached to that. And that's the other thing too about angels. When you communicate with them, they can be very weirdly archaic in the way that they communicate. He's used phrases and things with me that I'm just kind of like, what, like they sound either very Victorian or even earlier. And I'm like, where did you get that? But they don't, because they're outside of our concept of time too. I've talked a lot about this with people. I say, if you're actually, if you have an angelic guide and you ask them about, oh, when is this going to happen? You can't necessarily rely on what they say, because what their version of time, even though, like I said, Azrael swears to me, he's like, I understand the human concept of time. And I'm like, well, that's your opinion. I'm not sure that he always, maybe sometimes he does. I think a lot of times though, it's kind of an approximation. It's kind of like if they say, oh, it's about a week. I mean, a week could be like 3 months. I mean, to them, I'm like, yeah, well, that's close enough, right? I mean, it's to them, that's a really small period of time, because they're seeing things in a much more grandiose fashion, or a grandiose way of seeing things. But he does use words and phrases that sometimes I'm like, some of them even actually sound kind of racist to me. And I'm like, excuse me. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that was racist. So they just didn't know, because they're using a term that might've been normally used like in the 18th century. And now we would never think of using those terms. So it's interesting, the way that their personalities tend to express, but they tend to be very, very formal, and they tend to be, it's not that, but they do care. Actually, they don't necessarily express emotion in the way that we do, but they do care. I mean, they are deeply committed to, like, especially if they're there for you for something, they're deeply committed to you getting the thing that you need. But one also has to be aware that sometimes when you pray for something or you want something, that what you're praying for, that may not actually be what you need. You may think it's what you need, but sometimes they can see something from a different perspective, and they go, are you sure you really want that? Now, the thing is, if you're dealing with other kinds of spirits, when you deal with elementals, if you ask for something like that very directly, they'll be like, okay, we'll give you that. And then you get it, and then you think, why did I ask for that? Because they don't care. They're tricky. It's like the myth of Bacchus or Dionysus with King Midas. King Midas wanted to be wealthy. He wanted everything that he touched to turn to gold. Dionysus, being a trickster, he's like, okay. So he gives him that gift, but then everything, he goes to eat his food and his food turns to gold. He goes to embrace his daughter and she turns into gold, right? He didn't think about this. He didn't really think this one through. And so he has to beg Dionysus to take it away. And so Dionysus does, but he gives him a pair of ass's ears to indicate, like how stupid he was for wanting that, like it's, you have to be careful what you wish for. And so we also have to understand that sometimes in the way that these beings will work, we may have in our mind the plan. We may say, oh, well, okay, for me to get this result, that means these steps are going to happen. And then it could be everything's turned upside down and it's weird and it doesn't happen that way. And maybe even it seems like you're moving away from your goal and you're going, well, thanks a lot. I asked to get to this goal. But as it may turn out, the way you want to do it is completely not the way to do it. It's turning everything upside down so that you can get on the right path and do things the right way. So because again, we don't have that level of perspective that these beings have. They're able to see things that we don't. So if they know what we're aiming for, it's going to be like, okay. And of course, if we do have any kind of specific work, I've often said that I don't necessarily think human beings have a purpose. Okay. Like in the same way that a flower doesn't have a purpose and a flea doesn't have a purpose, and, it doesn't have a purpose per se. But at the same time, if we are connecting with, as humans with perhaps other spiritual beings, we may have certain work that we do with them. And if you are working with angels, then typically, like, the word I will hear a lot is to have obedience. That is the word I'll keep hearing. Like, you need to obey this. You need to obey this. You need to obey this. Because it's just, this is because that's the way they see it. This is a task you're assigned and you have to obey it. You can't just say, like, you can't whine about it. I want to do this. You have to, they say, but you need to obey this. They don't understand the whining part because they don't have free will. It's just like, if you're going to do that, you're going to do it. Right. So anyway, Yeah, just some thoughts on angels for today, because that did come up, and I thought it's probably worth clarifying something like that, because yeah, people, you can colloquially say like, oh, that person was my angel, right? I mean, you can do that, but there are some people who might kind of think of that literally. And yeah, this person maybe is divine intervention, maybe somebody was sent, but I think it's less personal. It's more about, those kind of interventions have more to do with the way that we're in the flow of life. And when you're in the flow of life, you will find that the right people will just come to you, because you're in the flow. It's when you're resisting the flow and trying to control things that you find that, all you meet is people who are obstinate and create obstacles and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, so interesting stuff. Kathleen says, wow, this is fascinating. Thanks for sharing. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, there's a lot more. As I've mentioned to people over on my Patreon, I am working on a novel right now about Azrael. Okay, so I'll explain this, because some people on Katonia might know this. People who maybe only are watching me here may not know this about me. And I have written a number of novels. And there's a whole series on the goddess Morrigan, because Morrigan is a great clarifications, Brigid. There's so much conflating info with divine beings, angels especially, or conflicting information, I think. Yes. No, you're right, Alex, there is. And that's not always, yep, totally got the message, is what Suda's saying. When I wrote the novels about the Morrigan, it was like, as I had to explain, because people said, well, is this about the Morrigan? And I'm like, well, yes and no, because yeah, it's how her personality would express itself to me. But, so the character was taking on different facets of her personality, and she actually had some quite different ones depending on the circumstances. And so they ended up being kind of a series of stories that are not actually about her. Like they're not based on the mythology of this being, right? And similarly, I had a novel that I wrote. It was actually called The Queen of Hell, and that novel is finished, but I've never put it out because there's a main character called Aiden, or Aiden. I mean, I don't know why, I always want to say Aiden in my mind. I think people technically say it Aiden, but so he had certainly one kind of look and personality in these stories, and so these are a completely different set of characters. And I don't know, for whatever reason, Azrael seems to like that character or something about him. And that character has kind of morphed into the personality of Azrael. So there's another whole story that I'm writing that, again, it's not meant to be like a real story about something, but through that character, there are things about angels and about Azrael in particular that get communicated through this character, even though this is just an entirely fictional story. So yeah, so anyway, yeah, I find that a lot of times that's the way it will be, like a creative channeling. Like they will be part of this storyline, and through that storyline they will show their personality or how they would respond in that situation or whatever. So yeah, so this one I've been kind of working on the side, in addition to the 8 million other things that those of you who know me well know that I'm always doing. And but yeah, so let's do, okay, actually the first card pull I wanted to do today, I have the Moonology deck. The Morrigan timeline is so good. Oh, thank you, Kathleen. I'm glad you really enjoyed that one. And yeah, I think you have a couple more on the way if you've gotten them yet. I know I mailed them out a couple days ago, so hopefully USPS is not too slow getting them to you if you haven't gotten them already. And yeah, that reminds me, I have to, on Katonia, talk about the books that I have left. I love what you shared for the book, the new one you recently shared. Yes, because Alex is on Patreon, and so she saw the update on that. Yeah, that's kind of the way the plot is going. And typically I have to have a synopsis in place before I can really start writing, effectively. Sometimes I can write bits here and there, but if I'm really doing it effectively, I like to have an outline, and then I can just run with the outline. But yeah, Project Lethe is actually sold out. I have my copies of it at home have sold out. I still have copies of Regenerator. These are the other Morrigan Timelines books. And then I still have my short story collection, and I still have copies of Maeve. So, and I think I still have copies of Morrigan Timelines too. But yeah, they're slowly dwindling away as people are ordering them. So, and by the way, if anybody does want to order them, check out Katonia, CHTHONIA.net. I have under my publications, I have everything there. So, okay. So moving on, let's do a Moonology pull for today. For some reason, I was looking at this deck this morning and said, yeah, this is the one that I want to do. And yeah, angelic work is one of those things that I never actually thought I was ever going to do. It was just something that I kind of shied away from, probably because I had a lot of the impressions about angels and angelic work that a lot of people have. You know, it was just kind of like, I associated it with a religious system that I didn't practice in. And I'm like, yeah, well, I don't deal in that system. And a lot of times when you see things, like when you see like the angel cards and stuff, a lot of them are, you know, they are just too, for people who kind of practice Chthonic stuff, they sound fluffy. You know, it sounds too fluffy. It sounds too, you know, like rainbows and unicorns and little hearts and things. And it's just kind of like, yeah, the angelic realm's a little, a little more complicated than that. And they're very, and while I'm not saying that there aren't angels that can't be there and can't be loving, there are entire sets of angels that are dedicated to heart opening, like the ones we deal with in Rahani. They call them the angels of the pink ray, but they're there to work with this Kuan Yin type energy, which of course Kuan Yin is not part of that set up, but you know, I don't know. At a certain level, there's you can have different energies that work together, even though they appear to be from different systems. So so yeah, there are some that work exclusively in that domain, and then there are others that just that's just not what they do. So okay, so our card from the Moonology deck is Full Moon in Sagittarius, which is look at the bigger picture. Okay, now, how many times have you guys heard that from me? You know, look at the bigger picture, right? When I opened right to it in the little book, I feel like I know a lot of times when I've seen people do things on their YouTube channel, they'll just, you know, riff off of whatever's written here, but I always find that the book is helpful for this one. It says, are you thinking too much about the details of your dilemma? Fretting over minutiae can be counterproductive. Or perhaps you're being all talk and no action. The card's a reminder that while it's good to think things through, sometimes you need to step back and look at the bigger picture. What do you then see about your current situation? What's the most positive thought you can have about it? Now is the time to count your blessings, even if you don't yet have exactly what you want. This card is also a reminder that we often have to take a few risks and go with uncertainty on this journey called life. Try to keep an open mind about what's for the best. The universe could surprise you. And that kind of gets back to what I was saying about we don't always know what's best for us. That's that wonderful Alan Watts lecture, you cannot improve yourself, right? You know, we always think we know what's best for us, but we don't. You know, we don't always know. You know, as he said, if you knew what you needed to improve yourself, you wouldn't need improving. It's kind of the way that I think he put it. We don't necessarily know what's best for ourselves. We think we can reflect on things, but we can only reflect maybe based on our own experiences and our own narratives. So sometimes, yeah, you do have to kind of step back and trust that maybe you're not seeing everything or not seeing everything quite in, I'll say, the right way. Maybe, and when I mean that, I mean just within that particular circumstance. What's right in one circumstance may or may not be right in another. So let's pull our Osho Zen cards and see what we get. Okay, so let's see. All right, we got one card we got yesterday. Okay, so our center card is Mabel here, the turtle. And yeah, I'm gonna forever think about this turtle as Mabel ever since Joanne ever said that. But yeah, so slowing down. This is the Knight of Pentacles, slowing down. If we're talking about looking at the bigger picture, sometimes that means we need to slow down. You know, we need to act. I mean, we can talk too much and not act on something, but we also can act without necessarily thinking it through as well. Because, you know, there's a balance between thought and action that one needs to have, right? So slowing down is, you know, taking a step back, thinking, and it may also be saying that we may be in a hurry to do things, and maybe it's time that we we take a step back. You don't necessarily have to rush in and get everything done all at once. Something I have to constantly remind myself of. The inner feeling of which we are unaware is the Seven of Cups, projections. Okay, so the Seven of Cups, what I'm kind of getting in my head just looking at this card. Now, Seven of Cups traditionally is about having too many options, having a lot of feelings about things, having too many options. And yes, you've got the little turtles on there. There's too many options. And I think but it can also be about the ways in which we delude ourselves too. Projections, though, implies that what we're seeing around us that we don't like tells us more about something that's going on internally, that there's some kind of internal battle going on that is being reflected in the people around us and how we see them. Okay. So, yeah. So, but I also feel like in this case, this may be almost the cup version of the Nine of Swords in a way, where we may be projecting certain things out, or because we can't see something very clearly. Okay, because we all know with that Piscean energy, sometimes things are diffuse. We don't really see them exactly for what they are. And Alex says, I've been pulling Seven of Cups all week, at least 3 times. Yeah. Seven of Cups, I think, again, it's that Piscean energy of possibility, looking at the big picture. But I don't know, but there's also this sense that we could be interpreting what's going on without all of the information that we need. And it could also be that we are interpreting something. There may be, if there's a block or an obstacle that we're seeing in the outside world, the block may have more to do with something that's going on internally. So, we may need to examine that and see, well, I'll give you an example. I know I felt that the term that I used last night, I think when I was writing to Phil, was like, I was like raw, like I'm just raw. Like, I don't know. It's just weird. Just like a raw feeling. And so it's not that anything's bad or that there's like a good reason for it. I just feel raw. And to be that way is just like, so therefore people may say and do things in the environment and they may be interpreted a certain way because something's going on internally. Right. And it's like, but that may not be what that person's intention is. That might not be what's going on. It just might be that you're seeing it through that lens because there's something internal going on that you want to pay attention to. Okay. The external feeling of which we are aware is abundance. We have this King of Pentacles energy. Okay. This is, they call this the Zorba the Buddha card, right? This is the idea that you can be a spiritual person and you can have material abundance. No reason why you can't have both. Okay. So we have this idea of, so externally, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I think a lot of it we feel, I feel like we are maybe becoming more aware of the possibilities, that we are more open to them. But in a certain sense, sometimes having too many options can just leave us very confused. It's why a lot of people, even though we talk about freedom, I think a lot of people sometimes don't want to be free because they want somebody to tell them how to do it. Like, well, which one do I pick? If I'm doing a reading for somebody, they'll say, well, what do you advise me to do? And I'm like, well, I can only tell you what the cards say. I'm not going to tell you what decision to make. Your decision is your decision. If you want to know a decision I would make based on the cards, but I have a different situation than you, so maybe I'm seeing it differently, So yeah, I mean, there seems to be an atmosphere of abundance. It does actually seem like there's a lot of potential good energy in the environment, but we may be very confused, which is why we need to slow down. We need to slow down and go, okay, wait, are we really seeing things for what they are? Are we really looking at, what kind of possibilities are we really looking to manifest here? So the advice card is the Two of Pentacles, moment to moment. Okay. You deal with one thing I say it a lot, one thing at a time, one step at a time. And to see it right underneath Mabel here is, I think drives the point home of like, we may need to step back. We may need to ground and slow down what we're doing and, be mindful of what we're doing, just kind of get into that space of being aware of what's going on. And ultimately, part of this differentiation is going to be, we got this card yesterday, we got the burden, okay? Dropping the expectations of others, sitting down and figuring out, okay, and again, these two cards are earth cards, okay? They're very practical. Internally, we've got this kind of energy that's not very practical, right? But but the imagination does have its place. We don't want to say, well, it's imagination, so we don't play things. So true. Definitely been living like this is what Suda's saying. Yeah. There's definitely this sense here of kind of, having to slow down and say, okay, and this could be this Pisces Virgo tension that we have too with the nodes, right? There's the need to examine the details. There's a need to get organized. There's a need to do all of these things. But really, our Pentacle card here is the Two of Pentacles. That's the, we may be juggling different things. We may have to go with the flow of the energy as it's going on right now. We want to get into that natural flow. So going back to what I said at the beginning of the live stream, this is that energy of when you're in the flow, what you need comes to you, right? And it comes to you in the moment. So we don't have to try, and we don't have to meet somebody else's expectations. We may have other people saying to us, what, are you crazy to do it that way? You should be doing it like this, or you should be focused on that, or why aren't you doing this, and why aren't you doing that? Forget about everybody else. I mean, it's like you need to, know what's best for you, and you want to slow down and figure out what steps you need to take to accomplish the thing that you want to accomplish. But it will be best accomplished without the burdens of other people's expectations and other people's agendas, or other people, going back to the idea of angels. I think sometimes if somebody acts as this kind of a vessel, I think a lot of times people may think that you're there to fix the problem. They may also think angels are there to fix the problem. And it's like, you need to slow down and see what are the steps? What do you need to do? And where maybe are you forcing too hard, and that you should just let the universe do its thing. Because it's not so much that some kind of intermediary being swoops in to save you. It's not about saving. It's about recognizing that you have the force of the universe behind you, and that when you're doing, when you are in the flow of the right thing for you, it'll just happen for you. You don't have to work that hard at it. It'll just come to you. So anyway, we're at 8:17, so I'm going to end the live stream. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Now, tomorrow I will not be on because I have an interview at 6 o'clock in the morning. So that's, with somebody in the UK. So I will not be able to do the live stream tomorrow morning, but I will be back on the 11th. So I will schedule it for that, and hopefully I will see you guys then. I hope you all have a great week. Check Instagram and check other places. And I think I'll also send an email to the regulars. Yeah, and what's actually going on, if it's important to figure it out, or to just chill. Right, exactly. Deciding where action is needed, right? Is what Suda's saying here. And yeah, so I will email people about classes who normally participate, and I will also post some stuff on Instagram, some updates, and it'll go to Facebook too. So if you see that, then check that out. Thank you so much, and good luck. Yes, thank you. Yes, fingers crossed on this one. This is an important interview tomorrow. So so hopefully all goes well with that. All of you have a great rest of your weekend, and I will see you guys again on